Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're going to Vrindavan tonight. Haribo! He likes Vrindavan, huh? Krishna just turned 6 and he graduated from calves to cows, and he played upon his flute, entering into the forest with all the cowherd boys, announcing to the forest, "Here I come," and calling the cows at the same time. And Shukadeva Goswami writes or says that when he entered the Vrindavan forest, by his glance, everything that was stationary became mobile. Everything became ecstatic. The sound of his flute. We heard that even the trees and creepers and bushes in Vrindavan, normally one might think that they're in Shanta, but our acharyas say they're in Dasya. But then, by Krishna's presence, they take on a very human-like feature, ecstatic human-like feature, by the bees chanting Krishna's glories, by the trees bowing down their heads to touch the feet of Balaram, who is worshipable by even the demigods. So Krishna is enjoying the devotion of these forest creatures. He's relishing and he's speaking words of appreciation of their devotion that's meant for him, but he's offering that devotion to Balaram. And the whole thing's a big festival, a Vrindavan festival. So we're continuing from what was left off yesterday, I guess. 10, 15, 6, and then we'll move on to 7. Oh, original personality, Balaram. These bees must all be great sages and most elevated devotees of yours, for they are worshipping you by following you along the path and chanting your glories, which are themselves a holy place for the entire world. Though you have disguised yourself within this forest, O sinless one, they refuse to abandon you, their worshipable Lord. And this verse is directly quoted in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And I bet you'd like to hear what Sanatana Goswami has to say about this verse. Here it is. This is Gopi Pranadhana's rendering of his commentary. Better than the non-moving creatures are those who can move, beginning with the insects, bugs, and worms. Maharaj Parikshit now recounts Lord Krishna's praise of the bees who followed his brother Balaram wherever he goes. That's this verse. As explained before, this praise is also applicable to Krishna himself. Those bees never stop chanting Krishna's glories, which are like holy pilgrimage sites that bestow spiritual upliftment on all living beings. Krishna's glories, like a universally magnanimous spiritual master, can deliver any person, whether fit to be saved or not, those glories bestow upon everyone who comes in contact with them divine knowledge of the greatness of pure devotional service. Paragraph. The bees that follow Krishna are great sages, but not sages like the self-satisfied impersonalists. Semicolon. They are Krishna's devotees, Bhavadiya, and of his devotees they are amongst the most elevated, Mukhya, because although Krishna hides himself in the forest, they never stop following him. He is their all in all, the Lord of their life. They join him in the forest. They disguise themselves as bees and thus take the opportunity to worship him always with their songs. Paragraph. Here Lord Krishna calls Balaram Adi Purusha, the original supreme person. This means that the bees who are always with Krishna are among the Adi Sevakas, the Lord's original eternal servants. They always worship him suitably according to the various pastimes he performs. Sri Krishna also calls Balaram Anaga, meaning sinless or free from faults or neglectful of all offenses against him, or granting salvation from all miseries. Because Krishna is Anaga in these ways, the bees can never abandon him. They worship him in any circumstance, fearless of the reactions for their offenses, and confident that devotional service will protect them from all distress. In truth, the bees of Vrindavan are better than other sages because the bees never stop singing the glories of Krishna, where other sages sometimes fall silent, absorbed in ecstatic trance. Paragraph. Those bees are like the great Vaishnava Munis who never stop seeking Krishna, even though he is hidden in the forest of the Vedas. Though his pastimes are difficult to understand and his service is difficult to achieve, the determined Vaishnavas never abandon him. They strive to locate his glories even on the paths of karma and gyan. They always sing those glories and promote them as the most serviceable spiritual asset, so they realize Krishna directly as the indwelling supersoul of all jivas, their worshipable Supreme Lord. As Vaishnava sages surrender to Krishna, giving up everything to serve him in pure love, so do the bees in Vrindavan. But there's other moving creatures besides bees. Next is the birds and the doe. Oh, worshipable one, text 7. These peacocks are dancing before you out of joy. These doe are pleasing you with affectionate glances, just as the gopis do. And these cuckoos are honoring you with Vedic prayers. All these residents of the forest are most fortunate, and their behavior toward you certainly befits great souls receiving another great soul at home. Vishwanath Chakravarti writes, quote, in order to respect you for coming to their house, the cuckoos, by sweet sounds, the peacocks, by dancing, and the deer, by glancing, attempt to please you. It is natural that a cultured person will welcome a guest with dance, kind glances, and sweet words. It's his home, and they're welcome home. Krishna said, quote, as you enter the forest, the cuckoos welcome you with sweet sounds. Okay, we got it. He's saying it again. Jiva Goswami writes, oh, Balaram, worthy of praise. Balaram is embarrassed. In embarrassment had turned away with a shy smile. Krishna faces him with this call. The word muda, or joyfully, should be supplied to all the statements in this verse. The does joyfully show affection for you with their glances. The does are compared to gopis because their glances are filled with similar affection and beauty. The doe's eyes are long, fickle, and filled with love, like the gopis' eyes. The gopis referred to here are different from Krishna's gopis. Balaram has his own. At the beginning of the Poganda age, that's 6, he just turned 6, he began to develop affection for young gopis, and they began to develop affection for him. In the Poganda age, there is a trace of Kaishora age because of the effulgence of the body. The cuckoos sing praises which give happiness. Why do they do this? They welcome Krishna, since he has come to their house. This is proper, for it is said, Vak Chaturti Cha Sunrita. The house should never be without sweet words. Sanatana Goswami writes, many of Jiva Goswami's comments are just verbatim of Sanatana Goswami. He's a very faithful follower. So the peacocks and the does produce beauty. The does produce beauty, reminding one of the gopis. The cuckoos please you with the best tunes, like sweet verses of praise, shuktai, when you come to their houses. With affection they offer their individual excellent gifts. The gopis should act in the same way, since they are also women, and their qualities are similar. Or, all these items are compared to the gopis. The gopis are superior to all these items by their wealth of qualities. They are superior to the peacocks in dancing, etc. May the cuckoos become the best singers about secrets of your love. They are most fortunate. Dhanya. This is proper because of their excellent conduct is natural. Or they may be filled with the treasure of the highest prema. He gives blessings to all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. This is because this is the nature of these devotees, having prema. Jiva Goswami adds a comment in Krama Sandarbha. Another meaning of gopi is a type of grass. This is depicted on the chest of Balaram. He hints at future pastimes of Balaram with some gopis. Balaram later went to Vrindavan and had pastimes with gopis. Text 8. This earth has now become most fortunate because you have touched her grass and bushes with your feet, and her trees and creepers with your fingernails, and because you have grazed her rivers, mountains, birds, and animals with your merciful glances. But above all, you have embraced the young cowherd women between your two arms, a favor hankered after by the goddess of fortune herself. And the BBT purport, there is one here. The word adya, or now, indicates the time of Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna's appearance on this earth. In his form of Varaha, Lord Krishna personally saved the earth, and indeed, the earth is understood to rest perpetually on the potency of Shesha. Both Varaha and Shesha are expansions of Balaram. I didn't know that. Viraha, an expansion of Balaram, who is himself an expansion of Lord Krishna, the original personality Godhead. Lord Krishna's statement that, quote, this earth has now become most fortunate, Danyayam Adya Dharani, indicates that nothing can equal the blessings of the Supreme Personality Godhead in his personal form as Krishna, appearing simultaneously with his plenary expansion Balaram. The compound word karaja, bimrishta, or touched by your fingernails, indicates that Lord Krishna and Balaram would move through the forest and they would pick fruits and flowers from the trees, bushes, and creepers and use this paraphernalia in their pleasure pastimes. Sometimes they would break leaves off the plants and use them with the flowers to decorate their bodies. Paragraph. Krishna and Balaram would glance lovingly and mercifully at all the rivers, hills, and creatures in Vrindavan, but the blessing received by the gopis, being embraced directly between the Lord's arms, was the supreme benediction, desired even by the goddess of fortune herself. The goddess of fortune, who lives in Vaikuntha, on the chest of Lord Narayan, once desired to be embraced on the chest of Sri Krishna, and thus she performed severe austerities to achieve this blessing. Sri Krishna informed her that her actual place was in Vaikuntha, and that it was not possible for her to dwell upon his chest in Vrindavan. Therefore she begged Krishna to allow her to remain on his chest in the form of a golden line, and he granted her this benediction. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur recounts this incident from the Puranas. So we're going to hear his description. He didn't say where it's from. Anyway, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, after glorifying Balaram by describing the service of the trees and animals, Krishna praised him by showing how others are attracted to him for showing them mercy. Today the thirst has become fortunate means in material time there is succession of avatars, but the touch of your feet now is more auspicious than that of previous avatars. How is the earth fortunate? The grass on the earth has become fortunate by contacting your feet. The trees and creepers have become fortunate by the touch of your nails in plucking flowers. The rivers and mountains have become fortunate by your merciful glance, or by glances which bring about auspiciousness. The dark creepers, which beauty itself beautifies. Beauty itself beautifies the creepers. They are fortunate because they are touching your chest. Paragraph. Gopyaha can also mean the gopis. Thus the meaning can also be, quote, the gopis have become fortunate, for they have attained your chest, which is desired by even Lakshmi. The Bhagavatamrita says, that's Sanatana Goswami, although Lakshmi is situated in the chest of Narayan, Lord of Vaikuntha, she desired the chest of Krishna, therefore she took the form of a gopi. Paragraph. There is a Puranic story, Vishwanath writes. Seeing Krishna's beauty, Lakshmi began to perform austerities to attain Krishna. Seeing her do this, Krishna said, why are you doing austerities? She replied, I want to sport in the form of a gopi with you in Vrindavan. Krishna, that is difficult to attain. Lakshmi, oh Lord, I desire to reside in your chest as a golden line. Let it be so, said Krishna. In this way, Lakshmi resides on Krishna's chest. No reference what Purana that's from. new to me, but nice. Yeah. And that's a further commentary by Vishwanath, but it's quite similar. Chapter 15, I mean, after hearing all of this, and again, the playfulness of the boys after entering the forest, Krishna is announcing his entry. They reciprocate. Krishna is honoring their reciprocation. And then the various ways that the boys would play. The whole mood is just very similar to the mood when the Aghasura demon is confronted. The mood, their age is younger. It's 1 year younger. But the loving exchange between Krishna and the cowherd boys, now here specifically between Krishna and Balaram, the Sakya Rasa, and as Krishna is getting a little older and has a little attraction for the gopis and vice versa, that the mood is shifting. The mood of Balaram toward Krishna, our acharyas described when they were little, it was just friends. Now it's just starting to evolve until he's the older brother mood. And that's part of why Krishna is honoring Balaram, the way that he's honoring Balaram, the elder brother being honored this way. But it's all of the rasas are stimulated to the maximum. Something we read the other day is in the other avatars, that this, in comparison to the form of Krishna, the childhood pastimes of the other avatars, it's just nothing that compares with this. The closest is that the childhood pastimes with Ramachandra and his 3 brothers, but there's very little described about that, at least in Valmiki Ramayana. Very little, 3-4 verses. And how many verses, how many chapters, how much glorification is there about Krishna's childhood pastimes? Think about it. Which forms, which avatars do we hear much about their childhood pastimes? So much about Krishna's childhood pastimes. How celebrated. And there's a reason. As the doe and the other animals and birds and peacocks, cuckoos, it's their home. It's Krishna's home too. It's like it's his home. It's his favorite place of all places. His favorite place. And the exchanges of love are similarly super excellent. Super excellent. In preparing for the Festival of the Holy Name, I came across a 9-10 page description by Jiva Goswami of commenting on one verse by Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that Krishna's eternal place is Vrindavan, and he resides there eternally. And it's like all this amazing description of the eternal nature of Krishna's place in Vrindavan. Even when he appears to leave, he doesn't leave, and when he returns, he doesn't leave. It's his place. Yet there's certainly the pastime of Krishna's leaving. And at least according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's gone for a long time. To the end of his pastimes, practically. Okay, we're going to hear some more about that. It's so nice. I'm just going to read the whole thing. It'll connect with the theme for the weekend, but Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan are so amazing. And hearing them, it takes you there, or it awakens the natural attraction for loving Krishna, serving Krishna, being attached to Krishna, remembering Krishna, just by hearing, chanting, and discussing. It's very clear from reading the commentaries of our acharyas, they're enjoying like anything. And they're sharing their joy very liberally through their commentary, faithful to the words of Shukadeva Goswami, but just churning the nectar and churning the nectar and churning the nectar. And sharing with the rest of the world. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. It's interesting moving from place to place where there's different audiences, and my experience is when coming to a new place, everyone's kind of like frozen, waiting for the next person to say something. But after a while, it gets lots of discussion. Kathayanta shamam nityam.
Guru Maharaj, because you've been moving from place to place, I'm a little lost about, I know you, in the morning classes, you're speaking from Uddhava Gita in sequence for many months, and I know you finished Ramayan around the Ram Navami, and then after that...
I didn't finish.
You didn't?
No. I didn't get to finish. I got to finish just recently in St. Louis.
Yes.
But that was long after Ram Navami, come on.
Yes. My question, or I'm a little lost about, so you picked up the 15th chapter from the Srimad Bhagavatam in particular for...
Yeah, there's a reason. Because the last time I was speaking in the evening from 10th canto was Brahma's Prayers, chapter 14. Yeah. And 15 follows 14. That's the reason. Okay,
so then in between was the Ramayan and
all kinds of things.
Up. Okay. I'm reoriented now, thank you.
Okay, I was just doing what people were saying. Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do the other? And so, just paused over there. And then I had to ask, Shatarupa, where did I end up? And she knew. She went back and because had the recordings. So I just did a little summary of the prayers, and then the concluding verses, and of chapter 14. And the chapter, it has to do with that 1 year that passed when the cowherd boys go back after the killing of Gasura, although 1 year had passed, and they tell everybody as if it happened the same day, although 1 year had passed. So Parikshit Maharaj asked, can you explain that? So he explains, this is what happened during that 1 year. And then when that description is over, so we're ready for, he goes back and, Krishna's entering his Poganda age. And he makes the request and his father agrees. And that's the chronology. And because the calves are so attached to Krishna, they've been with Krishna for like a year and a half, 2 years. And when he goes out with the calves just tag along. And the bulls tag along. And there's no problem. I mean, usually there's a problem. But anyway, there wasn't a problem. They're just following Krishna. And then it leads into Dhenuka Sura, and then from after that it leads into Kaliya. Okay.
Marge, I have a sort of basic question, but as I was hearing you describe the bees as sages,
The which?
the bees,
Are sages.
are sages, great sages who are devotees of Krishna, not the impersonal kind. I was like, wow, like if the sages are bees, then like I don't even imagine what like I would be. And obviously we don't want to think that way because we're probably not going to be, I'm probably not going to be anyone. But I just wanted to ask you, like, how can I try, like, I don't want to be disconnected from the pastimes, but at the same time, how can I connect as like a servant and thinking like, I don't want to be part of it, but I want to be part of it. And I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, be a little cautious about. There's two parts to your question. Don't project yourself in some imagined way into Krishna's pastimes. Let's see. Because that's not how it happens. And, these sages, they're sages that aren't well, there's different sages. There's sages that observe Mona Vrata. There are sages that are engaged simply in meditation. They're seeking happiness within the Atma Rama. Because this is in the previous commentaries that we didn't read this evening, but the other evening. So their nature is what their nature is, and our nature is what our nature is. And a lot of our nature, spiritual nature, is very dependent upon our association. And, associating with the sound of Srimad Bhagavatam and how that sound of Srimad Bhagavatam is rendered. We're fortunate we have the association of our great acharyas, and they're all in, what their rasa is. But they're appreciating all the rasas. I was pondering on this the other day, a couple of days in a row. Shukadeva Goswami, he's relishing all the rasas. They're looking in. Lord Brahma, he's an outsider looking in. And as an outsider looking in, Brahma, like Uddhava, as an outsider looking in, they both make a prayer, become a living entity of whatever kind, and just get the dust from the feet of the residents of Vrindavan. So that tells us something about what should our aspiration be. But at the same time, we're followers of Lord Chaitanya. And as followers of Lord Chaitanya, we're followers of Rupa Goswami. And we're taught about, being Rupanugas. And as Rupanugas, to become followers of the Ragatmika Bhaktas in Vrindavan. And that whatever that attraction of the heart's attraction is way beyond, the sages. So who knows what's on the other side? So, that's the first part of your question, like, where do I fit in this thing? But we just, for me it's quite simple. That is, we're followers of Rupa Goswami. Somehow, by good fortune, we're followers of Rupa Goswami. By the mercy of the representatives, that expanded the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the way that they expanded the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, specific to their time, place, and circumstance. And here we are, recipients of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya through Rupa Goswami's line, or Lord Chaitanya's line. And we have our process, as according to our heart's attraction and our adhikar, our qualification. We're, moving along the path of Lord Chaitanya's followers. And his followers are taking us to Vrindavan. Again and again and again. foremost. It's right in the Bhagavatam's pages. We just got it. Foremost of all is the gopis. Amongst all these, the bees and the thises and the that's and the does, the greatest of all is the gopis. So our heart's attraction goes to the gopis just naturally. And whatever that means, that's what it means. Maybe whatever. We don't need to sit here and ponder. We follow. We glorify. And that brings our consciousness to those personalities who are worshipable and glorious. And that's where we go. Yeah.
Guru Maharaj, I've heard you speak about how Krishna is precocious in the past, with his pastimes. Does that come into play here, where you mentioned, at the age of 6, he's already attracted to? Because it certainly seems to be a little early to me.
Yeah. Yes, it is. But he's. But there's more so in Lord Ramachandra's pastimes, but here also, the divinity is always there in Krishna from the get-go, from appearing in the prison house of Kamsa, and Prabhupada says some months, in the Bhagavatam says some days old, he killed Putana. He's all powerful, and he doesn't become omniscient. He's omniscient, but he has pastimes where he enjoys as if he's not. So he's enjoying, and precocious has to do with when he began to walk, and when he began to crawl, when he began to walk, when he began to talk, when his teeth came, all those things. That it was quicker than most boys who are born with mature bodies develop. So it's just that's just the external, and then that precocious is the external, and then he's an enjoyer, and they are also enjoyers. I mean, I'd say the same thing a different way. If the cuckoos and the bees and the peacocks are honoring Krishna in that way, what to speak of others who have other rasas with Krishna? It's just, in other words, it's just an exchange of rasa. And Krishna's presence elevates that rasa just like a crescendo, really quickly. So, precocious is in the external observation. I mean, when he was 3 years and 4 months, he's out with the cows and the calves. Think of somebody that's 3 years, 4 months. They're not doing that. But he loved the cows. The cows loved him. He couldn't keep Krishna away from the cows. And then once Krishna was with the cows, they would just follow him. They wouldn't follow the cow herdman. They'd follow Krishna wherever Krishna went. They just, okay, you can take care of the calves. It's rasa. Same with the, 6 years old boys and girls. It's rasa. It's not age. Behind you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I'm not sure how to phrase my question, but I was curious to know if you could explain a little bit more about the goddess of fortune. You were mentioning how she performs austerities to try to attain Krishna as a gopi, and then we see frequently, like even in other pastimes, she always In other pastimes, when the Lord appears, she's always trying to do more austerities to get that particular form of the Lord as her husband or so. Is there a reason why she does that? I mean, she's already eternally the consort of the Lord, right? She doesn't need to. Or could you explain her
Sure.
mood, why she does
Sure.
that?
Krishna is all attractive, even in comparison to Narayan. You know that whole story from Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? This, when Lord Chaitanya spent the 4 months of rainy season at the house of Venkatabhata. Is that upstairs?
It's the kids next door.
Oh, okay. And they would have discussions every evening. So one evening there was this discussion on this topic. Lord Chaitanya brought the question up. You're not familiar with that?
No, not
I'll
so
start
much.
go down the path. You say, "Oh yeah, now I remember." Okay. Venkatabhata, the goddess of fortune, is the most chaste, but she wanted to leave the lotus feet of Narayan to go join Krishna's rasa dance. How is this? And Venkatabhata said, "No problem, because Narayan and Krishna, they're the same. So there's no lack of chastity on the goddess of fortune's part." Lord Chaitanya said, "Very well. There's no difference," but she couldn't enter the rasa dance. She went on steroid for, with some number of years, 100 years, some 1,000, whatever, some long time, and she couldn't enter the rasa dance. Why is that? Why did she have to undergo austerities if there's no difference? And she still couldn't enter. You familiar now? Yes. Not yes.
Just don't remember the answer.
Okay, the punchline. Venkatabhata said, "I don't know, but I think you know." And then Lord Chaitanya said, to enter into the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, one has to have the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, that one gets to the mercy of the residents of Vrindavan. But the goddess of fortune was thinking herself as the goddess of fortune, which has no place in the rasa dance. So your question was, why is she attracted if she's already, with Narayan? Because there's a sweetness that's not found in Narayan. There's 4 qualities, and one of them is the sweetness. And it's not just like, hey, nice pastimes, but it's, it's a transcendental, unequaled, unparalleled, unique sweetness. And she's attracted. It's not unchaste, not dissatisfied. She's attracted. But she would have to get anyone, us, Sundari Radha, and any one of us, would have to get the mercy of the residents of Vrindavan, the Ragatmika, eternally perfect souls that have that mood, and by their mercy gain that mood.
My question was more of, she's already eternally connected with the Lord.
She's eternally connected, but the mood is not the same as that mood of the gopis. And how the goddess of fortune processes that mood is very special. We don't hear that. She does aspire. We hear that. How what's the internal intelligence and thought process and emotion? We don't know, but she's attracted and wants to participate, but she's unable to participate because she doesn't have that mood. She has the "I'm the goddess of fortune" mood. And the residents of Vrindavan, they're more exalted. They have more privileges. There's more intimacy. There's more sweetness. And they don't think, hey, we're special because We got Krishna's favor like this. It's the sweetness, that's the excellence that attracts her. All right?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Just to follow up to that, when hearing about these different levels of intimacy in our relationship with Krishna, like here I am just trying to reawaken any kind of attraction to Krishna, and so just hearing then that there's how you approach also affects, like has an impact on the manifestation of that relationship. Like we're just trying to follow, and it's still such a basic level for me that, like, I guess what do I do when I hear these, like, the goddess of fortune wanted to approach Krishna in that way, but wasn't eligible because of her mood, and I'm just trying to chant 16 rounds.
Keep chanting 16 rounds. And follow Rupa Goswami. And according to all the variables, including how attentively you chant your 16 rounds and how you carefully avoid offenses, and how and all the other variables, your regular reading and how you engage in discussing what you're reading, and your eagerness to understand what you're reading, and eagerness to apply, all those other variables. The Krishna will send the persons who will stimulate those higher characteristics when you have the desire for those higher characteristics. And there's a stage of your bhakti where it is what it is. Wife and 2 kids and a job and this and that. But how you process it is, this is where this train is going. I'm on board. I'm not there yet, but that's where this train is going. I'm feeling encouraged. I'm feeling I got a long distance to go, but I'm on the right train. Let me learn how I can apply myself, to my capacity and to my stage of spiritual evolution, so I can become more purified and more eligible.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Maharaj, I just had a clarification on, I guess hearing everyone's responses made me think more about even my question. And I wanted to clarify. So I guess me even thinking wow, where do I fit in? Or how, my relationship with Krishna, that's me in the center again, right? So if I get purified, then I will be happy just glorifying the gopis and Krishna and the bees and everybody because I'm not in the picture, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And where you fit into that will become evident from the heart level, not the head level. And it's when it's coming from the heart level, you're satisfied. Not like, hey, wait a minute. The envy is not there. I want to be over there. I don't want to be who I am. I want to be what I'm not.
I want to be a bee.
Those guys are good, They just follow Balaram wherever he goes. And what we read yesterday is sometimes Balaram goes deep into the forest because he wants to hide, but the bees, they follow him anyways. Because they smell the fragrance of his transcendental body, and they're just so attracted they can't get away. And they're all the while singing his glories. They're attached in the way that suits their attachment. And then, the other forms are what those other forms are because it suits their attachment. It'll all be arranged naturally. Yeah.
Guru Maharaj, it seems that the primary mood in Vrindavan is of Madhurya. And yet, when Krishna is addressing Balaram and he's attributing, what others are feeling towards him, there seems to be some Aishwarya, honor, and that they are fortunate to receive his mercy. It seems to be a contrast to me.
Well, all opulences are there, not only one. I mean, this pastime that I'm going to be reading, that I really, really like. I mean, not a pastime, it's Jiva Goswami's narration of a whole series of pastimes. But the pastime comes right after, by Krishna's arrangement. Krishna gives his association to Varuna, and everybody comes back, and Nanda Maharaj says, "This is what I experienced. And, I've never seen opulence like Varuna's, and Varuna's worshiping my son. So who is this boy?" And they all go, "Yeah, who is this boy?" So, then it goes into the opulence. And so they don't say to Krishna, they just consider, if he's Narayan, maybe he'll show us his eternal abode. And so Krishna decides, okay, they desire, I'll show them the spiritual world. Although they're in the spiritual world. So he shows them the opulence. And they're astonished by the opulence. Although it's all around them. And then they forget everything. It's back to sweetness. Or, showing the universe inside his mouth. And lifting Govardhan Hill, he shows opulence in the midst of, but the sweetness is so predominating, it just, the window opens, the window closes fast. Because, as it's predominant, but the other opulences are also there. Renunciation is there. And it has a nice drama to it too. But predominating throughout is sweetness. That's Vrindavan. Bee's not a bad thing in Vrindavan. Look at all the honey they make. They get to chant all the time and everything. Right? You chant all the time and everything. Online? Nothing online. Back there, Stira.
Like we hear, Srimad Bhagavatam is not a sequential. And my question was, in Canto 10, not all the pastimes mentioned are sequential.
Correct.
Right? But this particular thing after chapter 14, chapter 15 looks like sequential.
It is, of course. It's not like a rule that can't be sequential.
Okay. Yeah. I was just confirming this particular.
Yeah, it is
looks like
sequential for sure. But yeah, so our acharyas say sometimes when speaking about such and such, Shukadev becomes inspired and speaks about something else that has chronologically out of place. It's spontaneous flow of Shukadev Goswami's emotion or his love. And he says, largely it's chronological, but obviously much of it is not. There are substantial portions that are not.
Thank you.
Okay? You have something.
I was just recently studying Narada visiting Krishna in Dwarka, and he became totally enamored by Krishna's mystic power, and he blown away by that. We don't see something similar where Narada comes to Vrindavan to observe Krishna's sweetness quality. At least in the Bhagavatam. But then I was thinking that there was that story where he comes to see the dance, the rasa dance, and then wants to become a gopi itself. And
Yes.
then
And
he
he
wants to
does.
just stay there.
He does.
Any comments from your side in terms of this contrast of, when he went to Dwarka, he didn't necessarily want to be in that opulent environment necessarily, versus in Vrindavan, he wants to stay.
Well, just on that particular point, he stayed a long time in Dwarka. He didn't just visit. He stayed a long time in Dwarka. We don't hear about it a lot, but it's mentioned. He stayed a long time in Dwarka. Now, he could travel anywhere in the universe. He could have gone to Vrindavan, but he stayed in Dwarka. Krishna was in Dwarka. Long time. But I thought you were going to ask, he was attracted to the opulence of Dwarka, but why is he similarly attracted to the sweetness of Vrindavan? That's what was part of your question.
That's where I was initially contemplating, and realized that, there's this other story that's not in the Bhagavatam, that Narada was attracted to the sweetness of the exchanges between the gopis and Krishna.
The hearts of pure devotees move in ways that are not necessarily linear or, subject to reason, cause and effect, or chronological. It's quite spontaneous. At different times, they're inspired in different ways. Certainly, Narada Muni is super excellent in terms of understanding how to apply bhakti interject bhakti into a situation, whoever he's interacting with. Then how does Narada interact with those who are already bhakti plus? He also becomes amazed. However, we hear when he goes to inform Krishna about his next set of pastimes, he's performing a service. So he just does his service to induce Krishna to go to Mathura and kill Kamsa. He has a function in Krishna's pastimes, and he performs that function. Narada is a very special person in many ways, in the preaching mission and in Krishna's eternal pastimes. His very special function. And in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, it's Srivas Thakur. Very special function. Very unique. I would, my response to the question, or the question and/or comment that you're making is, Narada's Narada, and he flows without cause. He just somehow shows up at the right place at the right time and says the right thing, and then goes on to the next place. Even his form is all spiritual. It's not a material form. So he acts in a way that facilitates Krishna's desire, specific to giving bhakti, but also to moving his pastimes along, and that's what he does. And Krishna reciprocates with him, astonishing him at seeing what Narada saw. It would astonish anybody. What we don't hear is, how did the residents of Dwarka process it? Well, seeing Krishna's opulence. He gets up in the morning and does his thing, and then he comes out of his palaces and he merges into one Krishna and goes off to the assembly house. He comes back and he manifests 16,000 Krishnas. How do they process that?
There's a commentary in towards the end of the chapter. It says that only Narada was given that vision to see multiple Krishnas. The Acharyas say that the other residents of Dwarka were not given that vision, similar to King Prataparudra seeing multiple Lord Chaitanyas.
Well, they must have known that Krishna, because Krishna lived in Dwarka for a long time, they must have known that Krishna was in different palaces at the same time. Read the commentary. Does it say they didn't know that? What were they thinking? He's with each queen in their palace. They're not thinking, oh, Krishna's with me alone and the other queens don't have Krishna with them. Anyway, there must be some commentary somewhere, or how did it's just a thought, a curiosity, rasa kind of thought. How did they appreciate entering into their homes from one Krishna into so many Krishnas, and then leaving their homes and going into the chariot and he's one Krishna? How did that work? It was astonishing to Narada. What about everybody else? Well, so they couldn't. Send me the passage where it says what you say it says. Well, probably in that section there's some commentary by your acharyas that say a whole bunch more. It's just appreciating the mood of love of the residents of Dwarka for Krishna. They certainly understood he's the all-powerful Supreme Lord, because he's Purushottam Krishna, the Supreme Person. Nice to contemplate Krishna's exchanges of loving dealings with his residents in different places, and then smoothly moving to another and moving to another and moving to another. And if they understood he's the Supreme Person, how could they criticize him? No, the statement is there, because this question came up the other day. Everyone in Dwarka is a pure devotee. Then there's prostitutes. Are they pure devotees? That was a delicate one. But so if they're pure devotees, how can they twice criticize Krishna? I mean, that's not just Vaishnava aparad, that's a demon. So it's Yogamaya potency somehow to facilitate Krishna's pastime somehow, and all of that kind of thing. It's meditating on Krishna's pastimes and his exchanges with his devotees is very wonderful. He's all masterful. Okay, you have more?
If you don't mind.
One more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had this question as I was studying the 10th canto. We see in Krishna's, this is another mystery for me. And how Krishna responded to hearing of the Pandavas and Kunti dying in the house of lac. Krishna cried when he went to Hastinapur, and he cried with the relatives there.
Yes.
Out of grief.
Yes.
And when his father-in-law passed away, Satyajit.
Haribol,
grief.
Prabhu.
It was grief. And what's so wonderfully mysterious is this is the personality of Godhead who knows that the Pandavas were not dead, and he knew that Satyajit was not such a wholesome individual. So yet he had these feelings that
He's enjoying. And his grief is not like yours and mine. It's pastime. And he's enjoying that rasa.
is it similar to the fear that he experiences? It seemed like a negative emotion, right?
It does. Yeah, it does. But it's not.
This is unrelated to today's class, but something I've been thinking about since your authenticity retreat. So we hear of Lakshmi is striving for the sweetness, or Lord Brahma wants to be dust in Vrindavan, Uddhava wants to be grass. So these are certainly authentic individuals that are, striving for a position of greater purity, it seems, although they're totally pure already. And during the retreat, you had presented that authenticity is a daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. This was a statement from Brene Brown.
Yeah.
So, it seems they're striving, these pure souls striving for that position of greater purity is very different than what we're discussing here in terms of authenticity and embracing who we are and not or letting go of who we were supposed to be. Now, our bhakti practice is also infused with, we're striving for purity and it's so far away, and like you were saying, we're on that train and we'll get there one day, but it's extremely far, the destination right now. Would you comment, Guru Maharaj, on this striving and yet?
Yeah, in really simple language, it's just come to the spiritual platform. Because when we say the word striving, the vibration is a material vibration. So what's striving that's not material? Or say it the other way. What Brene Brown says may not be what a Vaishnava will think. Be accepting of who you are, rather than what you think others are. You expect yourself to be, or others expect yourself to be. Doesn't mean there isn't striving to grow. How do you be spiritually humble, and at the same time make spiritual progress? The example of our acharyas, just start with the 6 Goswamis, or any one of Lord Chaitanya's associates. They're perfect role models for acceptance and progress. Or they want to please. They feel they're not there. They feel they're not qualified, and they're absolutely qualified as part of their qualification to feel they're not qualified. And they're striving to go further. Is there a limit? There's no limit. So it's a spiritual conception of striving, a spiritual conception of acceptance, spiritual conception of humility, a spiritual conception of who we are, and becoming. So it's we're not there yet with a spiritual conception of authenticity. So let's get with Yasodhanandan and chant our 16 rounds, and try to be authentic about where we are, and try to continue develop a spiritual conception of what it means to get closer to the goal. Yeah, it's online.
Sanchari.
Okay.
How do we understand the difference between the residents of Dwarka speaking unkindly about Krishna and Jatila and Kutila speaking unkindly about him?
Oh.
Are in both moving the pastime along? One seems to be glorified while the other seems to be instructive.
Well, if you ask our Goswamis about Jatila and Katila, she is a lovely lady. Because she makes obstacles that are very delightfully overcome by Krishna and Radha. And their associates, the Gopas and the Gopis. She makes obstacles that make the pastimes of Radha and Krishna meeting even more relishable. So she's a lovely lady. And the pastimes of Dwarka we hear less about. I mean, one of the ones that came up in St. Louis for several days, or at least several times, why Krishna's departure of the residents of Dwarka was like it was compared to the residents of Vrindavan, which was like it was, or Ramchandra's departure with his associates was, so awesome. And in Dwarka it was so brutal. Couldn't have Krishna made it nice? Instead of brutal? So we had that kind of... So understanding in different places, within Krishna is everything, and Dwarka is a certain part of everything. And, the antagonism towards Krishna, one could say, one response could be, it was inspired by Krishna that they would take that position so that he could perform some pastimes. And, in various ways, get Satyabhama and Jambavati as wives, and it was just the way he wanted to do it, so he did it the way he wanted to do it. It's just a pastime, and so they were facilitating his pastime. And there's so many, other possibilities or combinations of possibilities of why it happened the way that it happened. But when those who are elevated take a contrary position, we can understand it's super soul that's having them take that contrary position for some reason, which isn't necessarily clear as it's happening, but for some purpose of the Lord. Why did Parikshit wrap a dead snake around a sage's neck when he was in meditation? Etc. Why did Uddhava get bewildered? Why did Arjuna get bewildered? Why this and why that? Inspired by Supersoul to do something to facilitate the Lord's service, which are, and his pastimes they're deep and profound, and not just, there's one answer. There's multiple layers and multiple purposes. And it plays itself out differently in different places and different forms and at different times. But to facilitate pastimes, especially when an exalted person does something that's untoward, like criticizing Krishna. It's twice. And that's ones that we know. Okay, Prabhupada ki jai.